Hey everyone, we are back.
Hello.
The Worship Artistry podcast after a short hiatus.
A little hiatus.
Little bit, so much.
A little bit later than we expected.
Well, yeah, a lot of things have been going on.
We've both been everywhere.
We're gallivanting.
We are gallivanting.
We're doing
Who's
rad
actually
things.
working? I don't know.
Well,
Just kidding.
I know. I'm like, sorry? What?
Anyways.
Okay, one quick thing from your trip and one quick thing from mine.
It was incredible. South Africa is beautiful. The people are amazing. I would go back any day.
That was super quick. Yeah, I was in Nashville. I was at a songwriting retreat called Anchor Hymns. So I got to write with legends and also write with some of my heroes. And the whole time I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I shouldn't be allowed in this room. But I was there.
That's amazing.
I was there for it. I got to contribute a little bit to everything.
So sweet.
So it felt pretty good. And I will say this. I think when it comes to songwriting, being in Nashville, kind of doing the whole thing, I have always just been frustrated because I go there and I just feel like everyone's flexing and kind of like, oh, I'm working with this guy. You know this person. Here's this studio.
Name dropping.
The whole thing. Every time. Every person, every time. And except for our teachers, because they're awesome. But at the same time, this group, it was like, oh, like what's your wife's name? Oh,
That's
like how
sweet.
many kids do you have? Oh, I love being a parent. Like you really actually got to know these people, and it was like, these people are awesome.
That's
I want to
amazing.
do more things with these people and be more like these people.
So very cool. I will add one more thing about my trip since
I took longer.
You did. So I'll take
time.
up more time. Yeah. There was one Sunday morning where I was invited to lead worship at a church. It was beautiful because they didn't even know me, but they trusted me and were like, yeah, come in and lead worship. And I was like, cool. But after being with the team on Sunday, they had two services. So we did one service and then they go out to the coffee shop that they have and they have like a little debrief before the next service. And as we were sitting around, I was just asking them about their team, you know, how big they are. And I didn't tell you this, but after I was like, well, how do you train like your like musicians? Like, do you have anything in place to train young people? Like, if you're struggling with having a smaller team, like maybe look broader, like look and ask your young people to join you, your youth. They're like, well, we don't really have anything to train them. And I was like, well, let me tell you about a thing called worship artistry. And then at the end, I was like, I had to add a little caveat. Like, I do work there, but I'm not just telling you because I work there. Like, this is legit. Like, this is a really cool thing that you should check out. And they're like, oh, okay, like we'll actually look into it. So I should check in and actually see if they're, well, I mean, I could check our database, but I can just reach out to them and ask.
Yeah, you can check out. You know, maybe we can offer them a little something special.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But it was super cool. I was like, this is a great, like an offer for them of just not an offer, but a great tool for them to actually use and apply to their busy schedules.
Yeah. I mean, it's so frustrating. I think for me as a person who started worship artistry and as a worship pastor, because I know what a difference it can make. Like you do things when you're overwhelmed with ministry and all kinds of things. You're just trying to survive so much. And every once in a while you get to a spot where you're like, oh my gosh, I did this.
Yep.
And that just has changed my life. And then I did this and that has changed my life. And you start being able to kind of, I feel like I've been doing this and leading worship for 25 years or whatever. And I'm still now like, oh man, if I just do this, that just helps me so much. And really coming into my own, I'm a little embarrassed that it's taken me this long to like figure out a lot of these things. But worship artistry is one of those things. It's like, and if you compare it, I was looking at just kind of different tools that were out there. And I was like, wow, I can train my whole worship team for the cost of like a couple stem tracks. Like,
crazy.
You know, like when you start kind of adding it up that way, you're like, oh yeah, that's a way better ROI.
Absolutely. Investing into your people.
Right. Well, you know who is investing into us, this podcast?
Who, Jason?
I was really excited. I got to talk to William Hastings.
Yeah.
And you know it's going to be a good interview when it goes wrong so many times in the lead up. Like first we were scheduled to meet on Friday and he thought it was Saturday. And then there was like another one, same thing, like cancellation at the last minute. Then finally I got him. I actually got him on the screen, and then the internet in the hotel went down. And so he was like, oh, I'm so excited to have you. And then that was it. And then we had to wait again. But all that led to, I got to talk to him as he walked around Central Park in New York City. And just, he was as awesome as I thought he would be. I think if you listen to his record, it's intimidating. It's 25 songs long.
So long.
It is very, very long. But you'll hear as he kind of talks about the process, like how he wants to be honest. He wants to, seek truth, and how he actually even kind of laid out the album to kind of take you through a journey. I mean, it's funny. The first song is like an iPhone recording of him at a piano, and you're like, oh, we're in for something. This is going to be good. And he's just very thoughtful, without being cynical. And it's wonderful. It's a joy to be around. And so without further ado, Benjamin Hastings. Look at you. This is
I know, look.
That's okay. You in Central Park?
Yeah, Central Park. We're on location.
Awesome, man. I grew up in New Jersey. We'd only go into the city whenever people would come into town. You're like, all right, let's go to the park. Let's go get on the subway. Let's go do the thing.
Yeah.
Well, man, thank you so much for joining me. I have it's kind of funny. I have not been this pumped about an interview in a while, just in terms of listening. My marketing manager was like, she's told me like 10 times, like, have you would love the Benjamin Hastings album. You need to listen to it. I'm like, yeah, totally, I will. And then like, I finally get the chance. Like, it's 25 songs. You need time.
Completely.
So I'm like, all right, I'll sit down. I'm going to sit down and really listen to it. You got the interview coming up and everything. And I'm like, dude, have you heard this album? And she's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, how many times have I told you?
Well, that's really sweet. Well, thanks for listening. I mean, it is it's no small undertaking trying to like sit and go through the whole thing. But so I'm always very grateful when people actually do.
Well, it's
give it a go as an album.
Well, it is really beautiful. I mean, okay, so let's talk about that. Let's get that kind of started. Just to kind of give you just a picture. Worship Artistry. What we do is we teach songs. So we learn them. We break them into 5-piece arrangements. So like smaller church bands can actually play them. And so
awesome.
We taught So Will I, which was incredible. And so like I just taught. I'm in the middle of teaching Take You at Your Word right now. And then
awesome.
And then but it's also hugely important. I think I'm a worship pastor as well. And so it's hugely important, I think, for worship pastors to get an opportunity to actually like live worship outside and ask all these questions and kind of always ask the why of what they're doing and everything. And so like, this just kind of gets me going. It's good stuff.
Amazing. So. Yeah, I love it.
So let's talk about, 25 songs. When you started this, were you thinking, I got 25 songs here, or were you just like, oh, what, I just got another one. Well, I got another one. I gotta keep going.
It was a little like the latter. It was I kind of started the whole thing for two reasons. We've also been doing United for a long time now. Well, actually, long is relative, I guess. When the band's been there for like 25 years, I've actually been doing it for, I guess, a pretty small amount of time, but it feels long to me. And a couple of years ago, Joel and I started having conversations about, he was like, would you ever want to do like a solo project? And I was like, I haven't really thought about it, like maybe. And around that time, I guess I started kind of having these songs that definitely didn't feel like they would fit with the United record. Mm-hmm. And maybe after that conversation, I started maybe actively opening that kind of, if it was a different tap, I don't know, but like kind of opening myself to like finding and taking songs in a direction that maybe wouldn't make sense for the other sort of outlets that I had. And I guess in that find a real sense of, and I guess a freedom to express, I guess, this side of faith and wrestling with faith, and I guess just even day to day, just what it means to be like a Christian, what it means for me personally to kind of be a songwriter and a musician, and all the traveling and what it means to be a part of United and all these things I get to do. And yeah, I guess I found myself kind of documenting my life in some respects, and then really documenting a lot of the struggles and a lot of the I guess the existential kind of crisis I find myself in. And And yeah, so I think as I started, it was like I had a few songs. I was like, I think this is like a me song, is how I would always say it.
Mhm.
Like, this feels like something that probably is going to make the most sense if I'm the one that says it. Um, but then I think as I wrote one, it was almost like they worked in this weird counterbalance. So I'd write a song that I felt like was maybe a bit more honest than I was. Not that I'm not honest normally, but I guess I was saying things that I was like, oh, should I say that? I don't know if I should say that. I don't know if I want people to know that. And then, so if I went there, I had this almost sense of counterbalance with being like, okay, well, if you're going to say that, you better also show this other side of you, which is like, um, for all of the doubts, there is still like an aspect of like faith and trusting. And then I would maybe write a song about, uh, it's another example. I guess that's what I'm saying. It almost worked like a clock. Like I would accidentally write like a 9 o'clock song. And then I was like, oh, well, I better write like what's the opposite of 9 o'clock? 3 o'clock? Yeah, I guess it is. Anyway, yeah, 3 o'clock. Uh, and then I ended up with all these songs that I didn't really, definitely didn't intend, I think, on the 25 song thing, but it kind of happened as I started filling gaps. And I guess
Mhm.
filling gaps that I'd created, like I said, because I'd write a song over here and I'd be like, oh no, there's a gap over here.
Yeah.
So it was kind of chaotic, to be honest, right up until the very end. We added a song, we added 2 songs in the last week, but I literally added one on the very last night of mastering. Like, where this thing is getting
Of course you
this,
did.
yeah, it was that little. It's not really a song, but it's that little like that Who's Eden, like the little pre-track
Mhm.
to Eden with my kids, and I did that as a. It's probably the worst part of me. I did that as like almost like a dare, like one of the Capital guys as a joke was like, "You didn't go and add another song, did you?" And I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna get something else in here because I wanted it to go to 25. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this, and I'm not gonna tell anyone, and I'll hand it in tomorrow, and there'll be an extra song. And so, and so we did. I went out into the garden, and I just asked my daughter that question. I was like, "Who's Eden?" Or sorry, I was like, "What do you know about Eden?" She's like, "Who's Eden?" And I was like, "Oh, that was perfect."
That's awesome.
So, um, yeah, so it was really fun. It was a fun process, but it was long-winded and chaotic, and there's a lot of soul searching
Yeah.
involved. I'll put it this way, I was pretty happy when I handed everything in because I was like,
Mhm.
okay, cool. I feel like I can move on a little bit. I feel like I
Yeah.
can leave this phase of life that I've been forcing myself to dwell in, and maybe start to move to like a not a more hopeful place, but like a lighter,
Yeah.
a lighter place. Um, so yeah,
Were
that was a
you
very long
well,
answer.
that's what no, it's perfect. I think that's one of the things that I love about the album so much is uh there's all this questioning. You have these very
Mm,
personal like questions. I don't know. I don't, especially a worship artist, like somebody who's like, yeah, I write songs and some of that's for the church. And so, I don't hear as
yeah,
much of that. It feels risky in a sense
yeah,
to say those things that you're saying, but you're not saying it in this. I think the thing that really kind of couches it is that you're saying it in a questioning way. You're not saying like, this is what I think now, and here's what you need to believe. You're just like, I
right,
have these questions and I'm leaving them in the hands of God, but it's okay
yeah,
for me to have these questions, and then you are
yeah,
counterbalancing with like, yeah, and God is also faithful and he's all these things, and kind of that. I love it. I think that's one of the things that's really unique about it. We kind of live in
uh,
this world where there's give me the answer, say the thing, just say the thing. Which side are
right,
you on? What are you doing? And you're like, no,
exactly,
there
yeah,
are no there are no sides. It's like we're all just trying to follow Jesus. How do we do it? And I think that
completely.
really, really comes across well on the album. Um,
Thanks, man. That was
so
definitely that. Oh, sorry.
oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say that was definitely one of the that was one of the inspirations as far as like as I was unpacking this stuff. I felt like um I felt like as I was kind of embarking on this journey of kind of trying to figure things out, trying to figure out my faith, a lot of the resources, probably not the right word, but I think a lot of the places I would go to find people that kind of were thinking like-minded, also had this great sense of cynicism about the way that they were unpacking it. So it was almost like it was hard to find. It really was hard to find kind of places where people are asking these questions and unpacking, and I didn't seem to like hate church and hate God now, or does that make sense? And I was like, well, I can't. And I know, I'm sure there's amazing stuff out there, and there is some, yeah. But I that was one of the things I was like, I don't want to get cynical. And it was one of the fights I had with myself. Was like, I was like, you're not. There'll be days where I was just feeling bitter and cynical. And I was like, this is not who you are. Like, this is not what this is about. And also, this is not the album that we're gonna make, because that is not a good represent. Maybe if it was like your fourth album or something, then your Coldplay Midnight, sure, you can go to the depths. But I think for the debut thing, it needs to be at least a reflection of the whole thing. It's like, and there is, I think there's more hope than there is not. So yeah, anyway, I'm really grateful that you said that and noticed that.
Well, I'm also like, even just saying that, I think that's that same thing. You know, I'm 43 or no, I'm 40. I just turned 44. I'm 44 years old. It comes in fast. And it's like, yeah, you go through these times of doubt. Like, I'm always envious of people who can like just have that childlike faith all the time. Right.
Completely.
And and it's just like, oh man, that would be amazing. But at the same time, you know, opening that door and kind of asking those questions has like led me to such a bigger God. Like, just, okay, right. there's more to this story, you know? And so but like, I think, like you said, like approaching it from a non-cynical standpoint, because it is so easy to just turn into, well, I don't like this and I don't like that, you know? And so it's, I think we really need balance out there, and you did that really well.
Thank you.
So why did you feel it was important to put it out? Right? Like you've had you're a very successful songwriter. You know, you've been successful with United. You know, there's the church is singing your songs, or even though it's going back to even So Will I was like, dude, that's a gutsy move to throw the word like evolving in there. Like, it was like really, it was awesome. I thought it was like so great.
Thanks.
I was like, this is cool. But you've been successful kind of in these worlds. Like, what did you feel like did you feel like it was risky, A, to put these things out, and B, like, why did you feel like, no, this isn't just for my tape recorder. Like, this is for people to hear.
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. And I think probably one that people should ask more, because I feel like often there's like, it's like, you know what I mean? There's like, oh, it's like been 2 years, I better release an album, or it's been 5 years, do you reckon I should do a book now? It's like I think I always feel like it's probably only best to try and speak when you have something to say, or at least you're going to try and add value to whatever the conversation is. And I think kind of a lot of what we're saying, like I just felt this sense of like, well, I basically had written these songs probably knowing I had some kind of project in the works, but also as a bit of an unpacking of where I was at, and a bit of a, like, almost like diary entries. Some of them, like songs like Fifth is, and even Hold On to Your Hats, and a lot of them just kind of came out in these kind of flash moments. Like, a lot of the songs even took 7 years, but like Fifth Is took a day, and so they kind of just felt like, oh, this is a reflection of where I'm at. And then I wrote them, and I was like, oh, well, I think this might be helpful for somebody. Like, I think, and at the same time, I was like, and this also might get me like Christian canceled, you know, like I might not have a job after this. But I was a lot more afraid. It just wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Like, people have been actually really receptive. People have been really, like, I guess there hasn't really been any complaints, in all honesty, or people being like, I can't believe you said that. It's more been like people being like, oh, thank you. Like, I felt like that last year, and now I can kind of have this thing that points me hopefully forward, because the intent was never to get bogged down. I mean, even in songs like Faith Days or Dancing with My Shadow is probably the saddest of the songs, and that's why I made it so like happy and upbeat. So that, like, don't read these lyrics, don't read them, just listen to the beat.
It's like every Bleacher song. You're like, well, this is so happy.
Completely.
Like,
yeah.
wait, these words are sad.
Completely. And yeah, so I felt like maybe, and it was also just like a sense of personal therapy. Maybe I felt like if I didn't say this stuff, I couldn't move on kind of genuinely. I think one of the things, speaking of Dancing with My Shadow, like that idea lasted a long time. Actually, it was a thing Joel said to me when he was kind of going through his own version of I think a lot of what I went through around just for the People album.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the People album is kind of his kind of outworking of a lot of this stuff. And when I was, so that concept had sat around for a while. I always thought it was amazing. And then I found myself in South America on a tour with the United guys. It's my first ever tour to South America, and it was absolutely amazing. Like, it was the most incredible time, so much fun. The crowds there are just so passionate and so like it's hard to find like a louder, like and a louder crowd, and even just the way they worship and the whole thing. It's absolutely insane. And so I'm up there singing, say like So Will I, for example, for the first time in those countries, and I just simultaneously was having all these like really like a lot of really sort of serious doubt, a lot of like, I guess, depression, and I just was not in a good place, and I felt like such a like fraud, like I felt like, oh, if they knew what was going on inside my head, they probably wouldn't want me up here, and that spiraled me probably harder than anything. The idea that like I was tricking people or being insincere, because I wasn't trying to, but that's kind of how it felt for a minute. And so a lot of the songs are almost like my confession of that, so that I could be like, well, this is the truth. This is who I am. This is what was happening then. This is all of it. So it's like, are you still okay with this? And if you are, then cool, I'll keep being okay with it. Because to me, I feel like it's like every time I sing So Will I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And I am pursuing God in that moment. That doesn't mean earlier that day I wasn't like questioning everything, like it's like, that's the truth. It's like, but I think both can be true. It's kind of what you said earlier. It doesn't, like, there's a lot of like, it's either this or it's that. It's either like, whatever, we can use a lot of sort of things, but I think reality in life is a lot more complicated than that. It's like you're constantly holding these tensions together,
mm-hmm.
and trying to keep the I don't know, the sleigh on the road, so to speak. And so yeah, I think that was a big part of it. Just feeling like I had to get it out there.
Yeah.
I actually have a song. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to add
going.
this because I feel like it's kind of related. I haven't told anyone this yet. We haven't announced it, but there's a bonus track coming out. It's actually not even a bonus track, so I shouldn't call it that. But essentially, it's like functions like a bonus track, coming out in a couple of weeks. When we release the deluxe, and it wasn't like a normal bonus track in that it wasn't a song we had and decided wasn't going to make it. Like, I wrote it like last week, I think, and just kind of recorded it there and then, because it was this other piece of kind of what we're talking about that I was like, I don't think that should live on the next project, but this project's already done. So I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to get this song right in this season. And it's all about the idea of like, I think in life, there's this old mythical sort of, the old story of the dragon. And like when the dragon is guarding the treasure, and that story has existed in different forms throughout different cultures, like the cultures that never even really found each other. Some version of that story existed for thousands and thousands of years. And I think that of the overarching meta narrative in it, and the mythological sort of like meaning, is the thing that you least want to confront is probably the thing guarding the greatest treasure. Like the place you want to go least is probably the place you need to go the most in order to unlock that next thing. And for me, that was like, the dragon was kind of all this stuff. It was like, it was firstly really sort of sitting down with God and being like, what I actually think about you and who are you, and is that still, being truthful, is that still entirely reconcilable with the mediums that I currently find myself at work in? Like, can I call myself a Christian? Like, is that kind of going through all of these questions? And I was so scared to actually sit down and do that. I was so scared to like tell the people in South America, hey, this is actually what I was going through when I was singing that song. I was so scared of all these dragons. And then when I sat down to actually confront them, the line in the song is, oh, the dragons I feared weren't all that fierce after all. And compared to the fear, the dragon was actually quite small. Like, when I actually sat in front of God and was like, okay, where are we at? I was like, oh my goodness, I spent 2 years scared of this conversation, and this is really not that bad at all. Like, I've just I've been dragging myself through hell and back, and we're fine here. This is good. And so, funny, like, it's a funny thing how you can let these dragons form and you pretend like they don't exist, but then when you actually confront them, often they're actually not as bad as you thought they were. And so anyway, that song's kind of coming in a couple of weeks, and I feel like it's like a good bow on the whole record, because it's one of the things I didn't really feel like I got to talk about, the idea of the confrontation and how it's easier to avoid it, but the payoff's so much greater when you don't.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
It's literally called It's called Dragons. It's very like it's very Lord of the Rings.
That's awesome. Do you talk about that a little bit more? So, as Christians, people of faith, right? Ideally, we do all go through these times. We have these questions and we work through them, and our faith grows deeper, and it's challenging and all these things. I know for myself, in my last one, right? Of a number. In the most recent one,
completely. Yeah.
There's a whole nother layer, because my career is built on like part of my faith. Like, those things are tied together, right?
Yep.
Because I'm not the kind of person that can go, well, I don't believe in God anymore, but here, learn this song about God, that like I wouldn't be able to do it. That would just break everything in my life,
Completely.
But it creates like so much more, like, beyond the existential scariness of it all. Like, there's even more weight, because it's like my livelihood is built on this as well. How was that for you? Like, tell me more about that tension. I mean, you're writing songs that you're like, do you like my merch, Jesus?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole nother level. Like, tell me about that tension.
Yeah. I completely did. You hit the nail on the head. Because for me, I think that was the reason it was so scared to confront it, because it was like, not only am I, not only is my faith like probably the biggest part of my life, also it's my entire livelihood, but it's also, and beyond that, it's kind of my identity to some respect. Like, it's the thing that I entangled like so much of my life up in. It's the thing all my music is tied up in. So even more than I feel like, I think it was ever a fear of like the money side of livelihood, as much as the like, if I lose this, like who am I? And also, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, and so actually in that Dragon song, it's funny you said that. The second verse is like, I kind of like my job, and I'm kind of proud of the things I've done. And I was so terrified I'd learn it's all a lie and I'd have to find another one. And
you're really good at this.
So it was kind of like I completely relate to all of those feelings, and I think it's so scary. And I think actually that was maybe that was a big part of why it was hard to sit down and really kind of go through it with God, because I was like, if I really know everything that I think, if I I knew it's hard because I knew I was outworking these different thoughts in these different places, but there was just, I didn't want to sit and look at it all at once, because that was really what started the existential unraveling. Was I sat down, I looked at it all at once, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's a dragon. There's a dragon in the cave. I was like, let's not look at the dragon for a little bit. And then meanwhile, I don't want to butcher the metaphor too much, but then like the house above it's shaking, the village is screaming. It's like I'm gonna at some point have to deal with the fact that this is there. And I think it's a real sort of scary thing for a lot of people. I think in the last couple of years, especially, I've seen a lot of people. I think the COVID thing was really interesting, and what happened in church as a response to that. And people just had a minute to stop, a minute to, like, a forced reflection, and they were like, oh, they actually like everything that I'm kind of pouring my life into. Am I okay with my job? Where am I at with my church? Where am I at with all this volunteering I'm doing, all this, whatever it is? And people just reassess. And I think the fallout of that, in some ways, was, I think, unfortunate for aspects of church, but then probably actually in the long run going to be really fortunate, because you're able to then, reset, have a recalibration moment, and rebuild on, maybe the church itself can recalibrate, what are our values? What are the things where have we got kind of just let things just happen for the sake of it? Where can we recalibrate our values, and who are we going to build on? Let's build on people that, are all in on this. And but I think I find that in the last couple of years, like, a lot of friends kind of in this place of like, oh, I've done ministry for the last 10, 15 years. I don't actually know if this is what I want to keep pursuing anymore. Maybe they've had maybe they've walked away from faith, or maybe they haven't, but they just don't maybe align with the church they were in, or maybe they're just like, I actually always wanted to be a lawyer. I want to go do that. I feel like a lot of people are in that phase of life right now, and it's kind of it's terrifying, because you kind of put all your eggs in this basket, and then kind of up and changing that is going to be a scary, hard thing to do. And so I also hope for those people, they find some kind of hope and refuge in them, and at least some of these lyrics, as they're trying to unpack it, and hopefully are able to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because for me, that was the biggest thing. It was like, it'd be easy to just, well, it actually wouldn't have been easy, but it could have just been clean cut and been like, okay, well, this is all whatever, and I'm moving on. But I think there's more in it than that. And I think even if, I think striving towards finding the light in any sort of situation is always going to leave you a better, happier person than just conceding to whatever the darkness is. Like, all my favorite albums in any genre, they all have this overarching sense of like hope, and overarching sense of like, no, life is going to be okay. Things are going to, like, there is something beyond this. There's a yeah. And so that was kind of a part of it as well.
So you have you have had the conversation, you've faced the dragon.
Yeah.
What is it like on the other side? Like, where do you find yourself now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, look, I find myself in, I would say, an ongoing divine pursuit. I definitely would say that not all the questions were answered or reconciled. There was no perfect bow. But there was the ability to move forward, which I guess is probably all I can really ask for. It's funny, I always thought with the record it would land somewhere a bit more resolute. But really the ending is like the So Help Me God song, where it's like, I'm gonna get through this. It's like there isn't even really it's like you're not through it. You're still like, but it's like almost accepting, oh, this might not kill me. Like, I'm gonna be okay here. And I think that's probably where I find myself, maybe a touch further than that, but it's still an ongoing sort of like pursuit of, okay, like, who is God? how am I going to try to articulate that in my life and in my music? And what's that going to look like for the next at least a year? Like this little trip I took to New York was kind of just, my wife was there on a girls trip. And I was like, I think I'm just going to come and just walk around New York and try to just think and ask some questions and be like, what is next? Where am I going? How am I going to continue this, this pursuit? And for me at the minute, it's thankfully I'm able to, like, I'm writing worship songs, and I'm on a tour next week with Brandon. I just did a tour with Cody. And I'm still able to kind of write these other songs that maybe wrestle with the other side of that and wrestle with, I guess, the challenges. But yeah, I'm really grateful that I guess I'm still able to, like, kind of stay where I am, and not where I am, but yeah, in this kind of world, and still kind of feel like I can participate in it and be proud of it, and hopefully at the end of the day move the whole thing a little bit further forward. Yeah. As arrogant as that may sound, I don't mean I would do that myself, but it just contribute, I guess, to the betterment of the whole thing. And so yeah, I guess I'm somewhere, not that's a real answer, but somewhere, it's roughly where I am. I'm in New York.
Well, it's you know, I think it's like so much about becoming comfortable with the mystery of God rather than being like, I need the answer, right? And like, that's what I loved about the whole record. It's poking at the mystery of God, right? It's just, it's not giving answers. It's just asking questions, knowing that, you know, I mean, gosh, man, some of the Jesus I know, like, what a song, you know, and it's like, and it's so, and you're just like, yes, I ask the same question all the time, not quite as eloquently, but I ask this question, you know, like, so let me ask you a little bit about the sound of this record. So, so did you find that certain musical styles, I mean, there are definitely, there is like a cohesive feeling to the record, but at the same time, there's definitely, you know, there's like one song and it's just you, and you can tell it's just like a mic'd up, sounds like a parlor guitar. Like it's very intimate. It's very acoustic and sounds very different than anything else I've ever heard on a worship record in terms of the approach, you know, like, and it felt like did it feel like there were certain songs that required certain sounds, you know, like, you know, Hold On to Your Hat. So at a piano, it sounds like a tape recorder. It almost sounds like Rich Mullins' old, you know, like Jesus album. It's just so there. And I love that you start the record off with that. I was like, you like sing this little thing and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. We're gonna settle it. I'm ready. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. It did feel like, certain songs required specific sounds, and then it also, a lot of it was just exploration. Like the parlor guitar one, that was just, I found this guitar in I was working at a studio in called Gold Pacific in Orange County. The great engineer down there, Dan Ballard, friend, and he just had this old kind of, I can't even remember what it was now, but it was just sitting there. I started playing it and I was like, oh, this would be perfect for that one song. So I was like, just turn on a mic. And then that was it. We did like 3 takes, just picked the best one. And that was it. So some of it was kind of just like explorative. The voice, like Hold On to Your Hats, was on a voice memo on my phone that we ran, I think, back through a tape recorder. And a part of that was necessity, because I was like, I want this song on the record, but we have no time left. So we can't. And also we have no budget. Like we've blown it. So I was like, I need to figure out a way to do this really cheap. So I was, so I just did it I was actually on my voice notes at Hank Bentley's house as we were just kind of working on the record, and you can hear his kids running around in the background. And I think there's the similar voice memo at the end, which I recorded in the same sort of moment. And one of his kids ran by and dropped a coin or something. Like, it's like, there's all this kind of natural ambience in it, which I really love, actually. And so, a lot of it was just birthed out of that kind of necessity. I messaged with my wife, like that was one of the ones we added in the last week. And I really just did that because I was like, I didn't want to self-title the record and not have something for her on there. So I was like, I've covered every other area of my life. Like the kid's got 2 songs, but like God's got a gazillion. I was like, I need to give her something on this. And so I wrote that on the 405 on the way, literally on the way to the studio in my head. And I sat down and I was like, I think these are the chords, but I mean, well, I guess they can be whatever we want them to be, but this song's never been played in music before. And we just recorded it. And I actually I really love that little moment on the record. Oh, it was also because The Someone is the song after. And she was so afraid that when I played her that song, she was like, everyone's gonna think this is about me. They're gonna think we're breaking up. And I was like, no, it's to like that song's kind of like in part to the South America thing I was talking about, and then it's partly to people like on Instagram, the people that would like follow me. And she was like, they're gonna think it's about me. And I was like, so I wrote that whole Message to My Wife song just to set up the next song and be like, this song's not about you, it's about everyone else.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. And the other thing actually musically I have to talk about is the even after the sound, one of the things I really cared about, and I'm honestly so glad it worked out, because there was moments I didn't know if it was going to, was the flow. Like, so if you look at it, the whole album, if you pull up the keys, it plays like a worship set, and that like pretty much all the transitions are on the circle of fifths. So it's like or they're a third, or the harshest transition actually is probably dancing with Feels Like a Blessing into Dancing with My Shadow, C sharp to D, which is really harsh. But so that was bugging me, and I was like, no, we need to fix this. And so I went in and I added a Dancing with My Shadow starts on the A, so just C sharp in that, and you'll hear the first note on Dancing with My Shadow is a wah. It's just like a C sharp in order to transition from the key before. So there was a lot of intentionality in that, and I'm really happy how it came up. There's a few things I would fix in hindsight, but we couldn't because the songs were dripped as singles for a year and the rest of the album wasn't finished yet. You kind of have to close out you can't pull. I can't recall. I could recall, but then they would all they'd get taken out of the playlists or whatever. So you kind of have to live with the song as it is. And those just already had endings and stuff. So I was kind of working around whatever things on the singles we had. But aside from that, I feel like the flow kind of just, I wanted you to not notice we're going from song to song, and it just kind of moved from one thing to another, which I think actually we ended up doing pretty well. So I'm kind of proud of that. And I also just think there's not many people are going to understand that. That's why I like to talk about it on like this is the perfect environment to talk about that. So I'm like, no one else is going to notice, but you guys will appreciate it.
Well, it is that thing. It's like, I think that's part of what makes it feel so cohesive, right? Like when you listen to, I am still I'm still an album listener. Yes, I use Spotify, but I hear one song and then I go, all right, well, I like that artist. Let's go dig into this album, And so it has this, I think on the surface, if you just grab this song or you just grab this song and you only listen to this one or this one, you'd be like, oh, those are really different. Is this even, what is this? Like a bunch of demos? Like you just don't know.
Completely.
But then you go and you listen to it start to finish and you go, I see what's happening here. And it's really incredible. It's a really beautiful piece of art. And I think that there's I hate to say it, but I feel like in the Christian world, a lot of times we kind of push art to the side at the to have usefulness or to have, like, oh, okay, we need to be able to use this. This is a tool. And it's like, well, this moves me. This actually draws me closer to God. Like there's a place for this. Like, as you look forward, where do you see the place of art in the Christian world? Like we all kind of, it drives me crazy that there's a, quote unquote, like worship sound. Like I will go to my death saying worship is not a genre.
Completely.
But like everyone wants to put it put it in this bucket. And I think this so clearly lives outside that space. Where do you see your music and, you know, kind of within this industry? Do you see it as something that can live outside? Do you see it as kind of like bucking against it? Do you see like trying to, hey, we need more of this in our lives? What do you see going forward?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I really resonate with a lot of what you just said. I hope so. I hope that this record can live beyond. And I wanted to make it in a way that didn't feel. I agree with you on the genre thing massively, and I think a part of the problem is when you make something a genre, then it has to it has to find a sound, and then you end up feeding the beast as opposed to creating from a genuine artistic point. And that's not to bash anything or anyone, but I do think it's a cyclical problem when you make it a genre. And so I also completely agree and hate the argument of like, not an argument, but I've heard people say things like, oh, I don't like, it's less about the art and it's more about the functionality. It's more about serving the church or whatever. Because I respect the sentiment, but I think that was one of the worst things Protestantism ever did for Christianity, was make it functional and pragmatic. It's like, well, okay, cool, but now we got these really ugly looking church buildings, and we used to have cathedrals. And
like business parks. Yeah,
yeah, they are, exactly. And it's like, well, we can't spend money on that. We'd be better spending money on like I don't know, evangelism. And I mean, sure, there's some kind of like, I understand the logic in a Western society, but I'm a lot more inspired by I don't want to be, I'm being a bit too like brazen, but just for argument's sake, I've probably learned more from cathedrals than I have from people. Like I think we lost the art in not entirely, but I think there's a danger that we lose the art in Christianity if we don't kind of pursue these the higher calling of like it's beauty and truth. It's not one or the other. Like I don't think you could point to a single thing that God has made that was purely functional. And so that's why I don't, it's all beautiful as well. Like it's both and. It's like, so yes, we need the function to be at the highest quality, but not at the cost of the beauty. Because what is it then? It's like what is it? If a song is functional and not beautiful, like it's a mathematical equation, or it's like it's an office building full of like suits. It's like it needs to be both. And so yeah, I'm actually really passionate about that. And both. Not I also think probably on this album I swung the other way and went I probably was like, well, let's make this kind of like more about the art than the function.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably an intentional swing, but I do think the best songs, actually the songs I'm most proud of that I've been a part of within the church, I think capture both of those. They try to capture both of those kind of qualities, and so yeah, it's a really good point. The most and kind of tell you the story. It's a bit long-winded, but one of the most inspiring things that ever happened to me, and I'm going to write a book on this one day, was I was back home in Ireland. I was with my buddy David LePepes in a band called Gang of Youths, and he was back home visiting. There's him and his wife staying in our house, and he woke up one morning, and he was like, "I'd really love to go to like a church, like an old church, like a cathedral." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And Ireland's like full of cathedrals. Like it's got more. I think Ireland's got more churches per square mile than anywhere in Europe. So I was like, okay, great, let's go to the cathedrals. And then when I actually thought about it, I was like, I don't know where any of these things are. So I Googled it, as any good local would do. And I find Armagh, which is this small town. It's actually a city And in no other country in the world would it be considered a city, but in Ireland, the only qualification is that you have a cathedral to be called a city. So it was 15,000 people. It's basically a suburb in America, but it's this city in Ireland, and it's got 2 cathedrals. They were like, oh, it's definitely a city. So we go there, we roll into the town, and right in the middle of the city is this giant hill with this giant, big, beautiful cathedral on it. And so we got there, we park, we walk in, it's dead silent, there's nobody there. And I was immediately just floored by just the beauty of this place. Like it had, I'm trying to remember all the things now, it had like mosaics, like beautifully kind of like patterned across the floor. But then when they hit the wall, they didn't stop. Like it didn't turn to paint. The mosaics continued. And then they formed into these one-of-a-kind art pieces, and then back into mosaic patterns, and then back into art pieces, all the way to the ceiling. And it was just this extravagant, beautiful place. We both walked around kind of with this real sort of, all 4 of us, we walked around with this real sense of divine sort of like awe. I sat down with my wife, and all these thoughts are just running through my head. Like, this place I think it took 60 or 70 years to build. The guy started it, never finished. I think like the city of Armagh, it's got 15,000 people, probably maybe 100 to maybe 500 people attend that church on the weekend, probably not even that many. And so in this thing's lifetime, right, including visitors or whatever, maybe 100,000 people have got to see this place, but it took 7 years to build. The guy gave his life for it. And it's probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I didn't even know it was there. And I'm sitting there in the back row with my wife, and I was like, isn't this just such like a beautiful waste? Like, and then she turned back and said, yeah, but isn't that just like God? And that completely shook me in the best way, because I was like, well, these are the songs I want to write. This is like, if I have a contribution to this whole thing, I'd so much rather it was cathedrals in Armagh, that probably a lot more, that's the wrong way to say it, but I'd rather do this. I'd rather have like alabaster sort of songs than anything else. Like, because that reverence, I guess, and the dedication to bring glory to God to that in that church was, to me, it just reminded me that I think in music in general, and in worship music, we can lose that. We can lose the what this thing actually means. And it used to mean an entire lifetime of service for these people building it, just so they can contribute their little share to something that was going to last forever and always pay homage to God. And so
I think it's such a beautiful picture, and I think that I think that's what the people in the church are longing for, and
right.
we don't know how to name it. And we're going,
right.
I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't like this,
yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, we're built to create beauty. I had a similar experience in, I was actually back in New Jersey I was back for Christmas Eve. And instead of going to the Christmas Eve service with my family and everything, I was like, I'm going to go to the cloisters, which I don't know if you've ever been there. It's, it's like this, old abbey, and it's got all this beautiful art in it, and just walking around. And it was such a similar, I understand cathedrals now. I understand the art, and because God is so unnameable, we keep trying to come up with more words to be like, okay, this is a whole song because I thought of a different word. So now we're going to do a whole song about that word. And it's like, well, how do you paint pictures of the unknowable God? And it's music and art, that can't sum it up. I think is just so unbelievably powerful in what we need. And so I'm so grateful that you in the position that you are have taken the risk, have stayed authentic to that, and been willing to not only have it for yourself, but to share it with us. I mean, it's a huge risk, right? It's always a risk when you write a song and put it in front of people. And I can't imagine how much riskier it feels when you're here's me questioning everything about what I'm talking about,
Sure.
But I think it's like water. I think that's how I described it to my friend. I was like, hey, I've been listening to this, Benjamin Hastings album. And it's it's just like fresh water. It's just oh, wow. This is filling. This is refreshing. This is what me, like the musician side of me needs to hear. And this is what the spiritual side of me needs to be called to. And I think you just, like I said, I think you've done it so well. And I'm super grateful that you've done it and shared it with us. And that on our fourth time, we were able to get this podcast interview together.
Finally.
It's an all-timer. It's worth it.
That was a great call.
Well,
man, thank you so much. They're really kind words, and it honestly means a lot. So thank you so much. And thanks for the time today. It was a lot of fun. I apologize if it's like been like nauseating having me walk around.
No, I know dude, it's giving me so much nostalgia because I grew up there. So I'm just like, awesome. I know where you're at. I got one more question. I got one more question for you. I got one more question. Yeah. So the one song on the album that I found myself like tearing up, and I was like, dang it, don't you do that to me. Is the one, where you're talking to your son. And it's as having a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is just, you put in so much of like what a father hopes for his children, and like the way that you're blessing him, and it's amazing. What when you crack that bottle of wine, what's it going to be?
That's a good question. You know what? I need to buy it online, because I'd love it for both of them. Bottles that were bought in the year they were born. Yeah. And so
it's got to be a good one that can lay down for a while.
Exactly. So honestly, it'll probably be, I need to do it soon, but it'll probably be the best one at the respective, at a price range that's not going to kill me, but it's going to age well with the advice of whatever expert is on hand. But it will be a Bordeaux.
Awesome.
Nonetheless.
Awesome. My brother-in-law is a big wine guy, and he actually he did that. He had got the birth year and everything, and it's true. It's it does. It's like, let's spoil you for anything else. We don't need to be drinking Bud Ice, like
exactly. I think it's a good strategy. I don't know if everyone would agree, but it's the one I'm gonna go with, and we'll see what.
Well, I'm on board. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Well, Benjamin, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. I can't tell you just how much I've enjoyed it. I can't wait to hear what you do next, and I hope you keep moving in the direction you're going, and keep stepping out there, because it is really life-giving, and especially in the Christian sphere, in the worship sphere, even like I just think it's so needed, and it's so like, I don't know. There's so much there. So thank you for doing it. I really appreciate it.
That album is so good.
I know.
And I would like to brag and say that I told you that it was good for like weeks leading up to this interview. I was like, Jason, well, I didn't even know that you were going to interview him, but I was like, Jason, this album from Benjamin Hastings is so good. And you're like, yeah, cool. And you shrugged it off. And then like a week before the interview, you're like, I've just been listening to the Benjamin Hastings album. Have you listened to it before? And I was offended. I was like, Jason, I've been telling you about this for weeks.
No, hold on. I did not ask you if you had listened to it. I knew you had listened to it.
Well, the way that you phrased it almost was like, have you listened to it? And I'm like, yes, Jason, I absolutely have listened to it before.
You're learning a little bit about parenting, whereas you're trying to convince your children to do things and make it their idea. So someday, if you choose to have children someday, you're already getting good at this. You're already have it down.
Noted.
So yes, no, it is a phenomenal album, and there's certain, I don't know, I feel like there are just certain records that really speak to your soul, that kind of get past that layer of I just want to listen to it. And that was part of my issue with it, was I was like, I know that when I listen to this, like I really want to listen to it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just put it on in the background, because that's not the kind of record it is. And so, it was worth the time invested. And he was just super rad.
And walking around Central Park, not a bad little view there.
Just struggling, struggling for Jesus out there in Central Park. But just like you can tell just like a sweet, honest spirit as well. And I think that's amazing and really refreshing.
Yeah, amazing.
So if you actually want to learn some songs that he's written, now we don't have anything from this album because it's not really a congregational worship album.
Yeah, but songs like So Will I,
yes,
That's the Power, and some other Hillsong songs.
Yes, basically, if you're like, these lyrics are incredibly poetic, he probably wrote them.
Or if it's a song that has a lot of words, it's usually from Benjamin Hastings.
Many words.
He was a writer on Gratitude by Brandon Lake.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
That's a good song.
It's a very good song.
It's probably my favorite Brandon Lake song.
Probably me too.
So it's a good one. You can learn that on Worship Artistry
yes,
also.
Yes, you can.
So many things you can learn on Worship Artistry, and you can try it out for free.
That one is actually a free lesson.
Oh, there you go. You don't even have to sign up for anything.
You can just go and explore Worship Artistry and see gratitude in all its fullness.
And be grateful.
And be filled with gratitude.
Filled with gratitude. All right. Well, Christina, it's been wonderful. It's good to get the ball rolling again.
Yes.
We've got a number of great guests coming up.
Yes, we do. See you next time.